First of all, thank you. Peace and blessings to you all. Thank you for having me. This is an exciting, always an exciting conversation for me, and the audience. I already connect with, right? So I'll just let you guys know that I'm the real Shawn. So whatever like you call the other Shawn, you just call him Shawn Reed, so I don't get confused. It is directed to me. He knows I've known Shawn Reed for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
So so we're pretty familiar with each other, and Shawn, I appreciate you inviting me. Diversity Inc. Diversity Inc. is basically our mission and vision is to be the preeminent data-driven source of knowledge and guidance on managing and navigating the 21st century workplace and workforce, right? You'll notice in all that I just said, diversity is the word diversity is not in that, right? And when you talk about diversity, you're really talking about fairness, right? And how we approach our clients and customers with the concept of you don't have to use the word diversity to be fair, right? So in a lot of the things that I'm going to say today, that word fairness is going to come up. Diversity Inc. has been around for about 20 years. And we've been supporting our clients and customers and those who just want to know things to really just say, hey, here's what you need to know. What we know today is diversity, equity, and inclusion is good for business, right? In so many different ways. And we really just show our clients how they can benefit from it. So specifically in the talent and workforce space. So that's what I'll say about what we do. In terms of what I do for the company, I'm the head of operations. I've been there for I started there last June. Actually started on which was a funny day. It was what day was that? I started on a holiday and they had to move me, right? But what was really cool was that and I always tell people this story because it was really cool. When the CEO Carolyn Johnson was interviewing me, she asked me a lot of questions and stuff, and she somehow we got to talking about golf, and she was like, oh yeah, I love playing golf, and I was like, oh, I really do too, and all this stuff. And then my first day into the office for lunch, she surprised me and took me to Topgolf. So that's the kind of person she is. She's really she's the engine that drives our company. She's been in the CEO seat for 3 years, almost going on 4, but doing this work for about 20 years. She actually celebrates her 20-year anniversary in February. So we're really happy to have her leading and driving this work with our corporate partners, and that's it.
Now, so Shawn, with that in mind, again, it's always great to have great leadership that understands, again, what the team needs by far. Tell us a little bit about the clientele that you guys represent. So right now, I would assume Diversity Inc. goes out there and their goal here is to make a difference of fairness at a particular organization. Is there maybe 1 or 2 companies, you don't have to say their name if you don't want to, but tell us again how you guys would go in and help and assess if they're being fair, and maybe how they're losing out to some of their competition because they're not being fair.
So that's a great question, and I have the pleasure of being able to name companies that ranked on our top 50. So we host a top 50 top 50 survey and assessment every year. That assessment actually just started, and we actually just reopened that the newest 2023 survey in November. And basically what they do is they go to our, a company would go to our website. They would click on free report, right? That free report card link. And they would begin to dive in to take a survey that probably asks you about 200 different questions about, six elements that we measure for every company, which is human capital diversity metrics, leadership accountability, talent programs, workforce practice, supplier diversity, and philanthropy. So those are the 6 areas that we measure. And we ask a lot of survey questions related to each of those areas. And once they get into the survey, they take the survey, they answer, we'd like them to complete the survey. And then we benchmark those answers against our Fortune 500 companies that participate and have ranked in our survey, right? So, you asked the question about, what companies we have, and I'm actually proud to say that most of our companies, and certainly for this group, can recognize that our top 50 list has companies like Accenture and MasterCard and Walt Disney and Hershey and Pepsi, right? And Allstate and Capital One, right? All of those companies that host really big branding, verbose branding temperaments and spaces, right? So I get really excited because a lot of our customers, what you really see is our customers, they love us, right? They depend on us to get them to the space where that fairness quotient goes up for them. So I'm really excited always to be doing this work and to be interacting with some of our clients and customers and our internal staff that supports them each and every day.
So Shawn, to that point, the fact is, as in their excitement, of course, they sit back, they take the survey, which I put the link to your website into the chat for anybody to see. But let's say
Awesome.
They go there, they fill out this completed survey, which is fairly extensive, 250. They kind of reveal themselves to you, again, being extremely transparent. And then they come back, I assume, they come back to you and say, well, now that you know more about us, you compare us to maybe our competitors. Let's say it's Home Depot compares to Lowe's. Then Ed, what do you do? Is there a particular process that you guys follow, or how do you sit back and start assessing and saying, well, you should be making these particular changes, or you know what, your competitors are doing this to be more fair? So how does that process go?
So both of those things happen at the same time. So this is basically a consultative process, right? So once they fill out the survey in its totality, or as much as we need them to fill out, and let me just add that the baseline number of employees that a company must have is 750 employees. So as a part of our methodology, if you're a company that has less, right, you can still take the survey. You will still get a free report card, but you won't be included in the top 50 competition. But once a company adds their information, we actually approach them and we say, hey, here's the results of your, we spit out the free report card and we say, here's the results of your survey based on the analysis that we derived from it. And I will tell you, we have about 6 data scientists just churning away at the information that is provided in those surveys. They really get a deep dive into all of those 6 workplace practices that we measure, and whether they want to engage or we engage them, what they'll get is what they'll get is a detailed consult and meeting that describes where they should be going, right? So maybe they're a company that's at the very beginning of their journey, right? We may say, hey, you might benefit from our DIVP, or what we call Diversity Inc. Best Practices subscription, right? It's actually a separate website that we have. It's subscription based. And what it is basically a learning toolkit, right? So it provides webinars and stories. We have something called Meeting in a Box, right? Where we have, different organizations that are part of our client base. They come in and they give their best practices based on, what they provide. And then we have a benchmarking package, right? And that benchmarking package, once you I think once you perceive yourself as a company that is really wanting to engage and be all in the process, then you go into our benchmarking package, which includes the IBP, but also includes a lot more consulting related to just the ongoing journey that a company goes into, right? So once you get your survey, what we do is we connect with you. We have several different meetings related to you, your results, and then we go in and we say, here's some best practices, or here are some things that you might want to do that will enhance and improve your fairness quotient, number one, and number two, just get you higher on the top 50 scale. So
Gotcha.
what I do know is that our top 50 event, which is May 2nd this year, we fill Cipriani, New York, with a bunch of companies who really want to know who's number one on the list. So it's an exciting time for us right now, for sure.
Well, I think we're so many companies, again, myself included, we're all competitive. Who doesn't want to be number one on the good charts? On the bad charts, of course, we don't want to be present, but on the good charts, yes, everybody wants to be number one by far.
Agreed.
You brought up a couple of great points that I want to, go a little bit deeper into. One was the fact of, again, is there one or two particular areas or channels or divisions that people find out that they're not being fair? Again, is one. And so say, like, and it's something that may have surprised you in the last few months, but set back when they found out that they thought they were being extremely balanced, they thought they were being extremely diverse, and they realized that they were not. Was there one particular area that kind of just, struck you?
There's a lot of areas that strike me. Number one, I think the nuance of companies feeling like they didn't know that they weren't being fair or diverse, or whatever the word you want to use, is really silly. It's a silly concept, right? Because what every company has to do is they have to manage a certain level of data, right, based on their industry. So if they're looking at that data and they actually care, right, they already know what they're deficient in, right? So they come to us to help fix, right? We're the fixers, right? And what I'll say is that I think I don't want to rank it per se, but I'll tell you that talent management is one area that probably hasn't been the most diverse historically, right? So where you see a predominant face in the company is probably what their go-to is, right? And not more than that. In this group, right, it's very specific, right? It starts with Black, right? So I'm not going to expect to see a bunch of other faces on this Zoom or in the room. I also think that as we engage our current workforce, right, that workforce is increasingly non-white looking, right? And as that workforce attempts to achieve growth in that company, we have to create space and fairness for them to be able to grow. And I think that's where a lot of companies haven't been doing well, is that succession planning and that growth plan for folks who are not white. And as you know, we have a lot of companies still that don't even have a diverse looking C-suite, right? Or board of directors, right? So we kind of start with, in our analysis, we kind of start with, what does your executive team look like? And then it just cascades down from there. So I would say fair succession planning and talent growth and improvement. I think those are specific areas of growth for many companies, specifically the companies that engage us.
No, which again, great points. I sit back and I think about how HR now has a seat at the table of most companies, where in the past it did not. It was kind of a subgroup. And now I'm hoping that now that HR has a seat at the table, they are actually also finding ways to add in additional diversity leaders within to make sure that this spirit of fairness is actually resonating all throughout the business. So, great point. What was interesting, and again, just to make it clear, again, even though we decided as a group to make the name, of course, extremely bold and have it where we're Blacks in Performance Marketing, we always have it where we understand that no major movement or progress can be made solely within just one group for one group. We need the support of everybody else who does not look like us by far. And so on our website, we actually have it where we ask people to sign up as allies or as members or just individuals, professionals across the board, because it's going to take a village, and that village is going to be extremely diverse to help it where we actually start having it where we see much more diversity within the decision makers of our industry. So we're making great strides. And again, having it where this group has been around for over 2 years now. We celebrated our 2-year anniversary. I think it was this past August. So extremely proud and happy about that. And the goal here is to continue to go strong.
So and let me just add to that, and I certainly didn't mean to say that you only had Black people there,
no.
But what I will say is the most important point you made there is that identifying allies and sponsors, right? Those are programs that most companies don't have and actually need, right? Because how does one grow without it, right? We see in most major companies that our white counterparts, right? They always have the resources to grow, right? They may not want to grow themselves, but their resources are way more prevalent than ours, right? So when we look at as people of color, when we look at those individuals and we say, where are their allies and where are their sponsors coming from, right? They're obviously coming from the same pool, right? They can't come from a different pool of people, right? So the same white faces that our white counterparts use are the same white faces that we would use, right? So we need them to grow, right? We need those allies, we need those sponsors. We need folks that look like us to be those sponsors as well, right? So there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to succession planning and talent development and talent acquisition and all those things, right? And the other piece I will say is while the growth of the CDO, the Chief Diversity Officer, has been probably magnified 5 million times over the last 2 years, you're actually seeing folks moving around now, right? Because they're not feeling like that company is ingrained in doing the work, right? Or they didn't get the budget, right, that they needed to do the work themselves. So there's a lot going on in this space that we talk to our companies each and every day about, right? Like, what are your challenges? What are your pain points related? And here's how we can help. So I just wanted to add on to that because the allies and the sponsor piece was important.
So to that point, you mentioned as far goes, it's really about bottom line. Let's think about it. Nobody's in business to sit back and really have fun. It's really about making money.
Mhm.
And so do you find a lot of times that it's much easier? Do you guys have to approach a company and say, not just out of fairness, but out of financial growth? We've come to understand that the clients that we have that follow some of our procedures and practices that become much more fair, much more diverse, end up adding more to their bottom line. Do you actually have any kind of examples like that, or even in your newsletter, the subscription newsletter? Again, I would love to make sure, and I'll send that out to the team, the whole group here, so they can get, so maybe they want to sign up for that subscription piece so they can implement it. But any examples like that you can give to us?
I don't have any examples necessarily that I will share, but I will say this, that I think we all know diverse faces bring business to every company, right? Because we're such a global enigma now, right? Nothing can happen without a Zoom. Everything is hybrid now, right? Like you can come and go as you please and still get your work done. The landscape for talent has also increased. So, and the benefit of having all diverse looks and actions represented in one's company is just good. It's just good for business, and ultimately brings new customers, new insights, new feedback, new thought leadership. All those things increase your profit, right? Whether it's direct or indirect. So for me, there's never a conversation where we can say it's not good for business, right? It's always good for business. So I will certainly say that. And I'll add that yes, we have some customers that actually track that and use that in their town halls to pump up the crowd and engage their team members and employees about the benefits of engaging not only with us but being a fair workplace.
Gotcha. No, understood. And so I think it's always interesting when we chose the name of Blacks in Performance Marketing, it was something that we wanted to have a name that was so extremely bold that it got people's attention. And I'm sure we could have went with something that said, diversity. That sounds so much nicer and sweeter, but we wanted to have like a powerful impact per se, right off the bat. Do you find yourself focusing more, and can we talk about diversity? We're not just talking about just overall ethnicity. Again, when you talk about, diversity, what other areas do you, go into? Are you talking about women? You're talking about handicaps? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Man, this work is so, it's not linear at all, man. It's not linear, right? Like there's so many dependencies that go into this work, right? And we all, first of all, I'm on the board of an organization that's called Blacks in Sports, right? So we're very intentional about who we want to serve and support, right? So the first off, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. People lean on racial diversity as the first thing because it's the most visual, right? It's kind of like a man and a woman dating. The first thing is visual, right? There's no nuance to that. But when you think about when we think about our work, we really dig into as an example, as a part of the submission process, right? We ask that everybody have and be certified with the National Association of Disabilities, right? NOD. And I will tell you that our founder, Lou Visconti, is a disabled veteran. So he's very passionate about things that don't have anything necessarily to do with specific to race. But we cover every area in our survey of what your talent pool looks like, right? Where you have the data to support it. We actually validate it, triple validate it. We'll tell you whether or not you're good or you're not good, right? Based on those numbers. So it's not only a racial, it's never only a racial conversation. We, in supplier diversity, we ask you to go to different, be multi-tiered when we look at supplier diversity and how that's supported, right? How we're supporting women, how we're supporting women of color, how we're supporting, it doesn't have to be black, white, whatever. We're very passionate about all the levels and all the areas of diversity and not just race. So, and I would tell you, there's probably a few of us that don't even look at that don't even look at race anymore, right? We're on to bigger and better things, right? Which really relates to, how are we supporting our LGBTQ community? How are we supporting our veterans? How are we supporting our mature workers, right? How are we supporting those with disabilities, right? There's like 6 million people that have a disability, right? Big or small, right? That's a lot of people, right? That you have to be concerned with, because a company doesn't support disabled workers, right? In whatever way they do or they don't, that's an issue. That's an issue of inclusion. That's an issue of equity, right? So if you're not bringing them in the door from a talent perspective, you're already behind the 8 ball, right? With regard to your stats and your data. So I'm very excited, not only to be involved in that work, but just to advocate for folks who don't have that allyship or sponsorship or support.
So no, with that in mind, right now, I think the majority of the companies that are represented right now, again, several of them, of course, are smaller than 750 members, but a couple of them are actually would meet that criteria.
Mhm.
Is there anything that Diversity Inc. can do right now, and maybe not, for those smaller companies? So, for example, if the smaller companies took the survey, or whatever it might be, how could the smaller companies participate?
Well, right now, there's not a way for companies to participate under 750 in the top 50 competition, right? But as an organization, you can say, hey, here's my score, right? Maybe they pay for consultation, right? Or maybe they say, hey, I need support here. Maybe they get DIBP and they get diversity best practices. Maybe they utilize that support. So there's different ways to support smaller membered companies. It's just not the participation in the top 50 event. So you're not ranked against. And the idea is that you're not ranking against like companies, right? If you're a company we wouldn't even rank, as Diversity Inc. wouldn't even rank in the top 50, because we have less than 50 employees in our company, right? We're small but mighty. But we walk the path that we drive others to walk. And I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, understood. So now what's interesting is that, of course, when our organization, the Blacks in Performance Marketing, we did a name change last year, but we realized that we came out of the spirit of enough is enough. And so with that in mind, we had it where, of course, around the murder of George Floyd, of course, initiated quite a lot of change within all industries, across the board. And then you had it where you had an audience of the world who was all stuck with COVID at home, looking at their TVs, couldn't go outside and socialize and do anything else. And they're all looking at this Black man be murdered right there in broad daylight with, again, with an officer's knee right on his neck. And so with that in mind, again, you guys have been around, as you mentioned, 20 plus years now. Again, was there any change? And I know you weren't at the organization at that point, but was there any particular change? Did your business grow? What occurred? Did you see any drastic change around that time?
Yeah, I'm gonna say, hell yeah, right? We, I think our business grew exponentially. To be honest, our business is driven on a great many indicators, right? While we're really just a small data company that supports much larger organizations, giving them insights to their workforce. To tell you the truth, the macro environment affects us quite a bit, right? So I'll give you a couple of examples. One being George Floyd, obviously, pandemic, all those things, right? So I treat it like the double pandemic, really, right? But we all understand the unrest and complicated activities that went on during that time. But what I would tell you is an enormous number of companies signed on with us to get help and get support, because they understand that, number one, from a brand perspective, they need to be in the game, right? Without a doubt, right? So just high level branding, right? Association, folks were jumping on, getting into our website and really digging into the survey, right? Some of those companies are still our clients, right? Others we recognize as folks who really don't want to do the work, right? And I can tell you that, we're divorced ourselves from a few that didn't want to do the work. We only care about the companies that want to do the work, right? Regardless of the macro environment around us, right? Whether it be political, financial, organizational, like it shouldn't matter, right? You should want for your organization and your employees a fair workplace. So we were positively affected. But guess what? If you take a look at it politically, right? And the Roe v. Wade decision, right, last year. That's another point of obvious contention for a great many. And here's what I would say, right? We run into what at the individual level, right? Because most of our data covers organizational, while it's driven by individuals, it's mostly organizational data. But now we run into, what's happening on the individual employee level, right? How can we support and drive insight into what that employee is dealing with from simply from where they work, right? So if we take a look at, if you're, we're not a political company, right? We just give data that supports whatever you want to support, right? So if I say, oh, here are the states that support the decision to bring down Roe v. Wade, right? And they're likely red states, right? If I say, hey, you're located in a red state, right? And your talent pool might suffer, because folks may not want to be affiliated with you because you're affiliated with that state, right? So now I'm giving him data, he or she data on just talent pool, right? Just here's how your talent pool is going to be affected, or your talent efforts are going to be affected based on this ruling, whether you believe in it or not, right? So you may want to start thinking about down the road, you may want to start thinking about how you're going to support your employees as this law begins to affect others, right? So the data speaks to a great many things, right? That's why I'm so amped and proud to be with this company, because we're just going to give you what you need to grow and support your workplace and your talent. But you need to know some things. We need to be able to forecast for you how you're going to need to behave in the near or far future.
Gotcha. So question, Shawn, do you allow them, do companies actually complete your survey each and every year? Or how often can they come back to complete a survey? Because I'm looking here.
They completed every, so the folks that are in kind of embedded our clients in the top 50 survey, they complete that survey every year.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
that survey is the basis for how we support them in the new year, right? Because that data is different every year, right? So if you're this year, I should say last year, if you're Accenture and you're number one on the list, right? You have to take the survey again for us to benchmark you against others, or else you can't be number one on the list, right?
Oh, no,
Right. So I mean, so yes, the answer is every year, as you want to participate and obviously get higher on the list, you have to take that survey again. And it's a task, right? It's not, you don't go in and fill out the survey is not completed in a day. Not one time have I ever heard that. In fact, we actually do webinars to help companies, to support companies in their endeavor to complete the survey, right? We give them tricks and tools to be able to do that. A lot of it is, it's anybody that's done like a RFP understands like that process involves like a few people, right? So while we only deal with one lead person, they in turn have to bring in the team to support the completion of that survey.
Gotcha. Well, something that I wanted, and I know that you had brought this up to me earlier, there's something that you have on your website called best practices. And the goal here is to have it where I know as we are sitting back and we're wrapping up our conversation today, I just sent it into the chat. You actually have it where people can go on and see different areas of, best practices for their company, so they can sit back and grow in the best way possible. So I suggest that everybody listening to that, again, please go in and check out the website, check out the best practices. Some of them are locked, I guess. Is that a paid service?
So it's a subscription service. You would, and it's based on a number of people in your company. So the rates are based on the number of people in your company. So just if you endeavor to get started with DIVP, you can just connect on our website and say you're interested, and somebody will definitely get back to you probably the same day with information on how to get locked into that and what the pricing is.
Well, Shawn, thank you so much for the insight of what DiversityInc and you do for them. Again, by far, it's great to know that there's companies like yours that are collecting the needed data to share with people, so people are not in limbo or not in denial of what is the truth. In essence, again, right now, it's again, data, I think, is always key, is the fact that it'll tell us, again, if we're right or if we're wrong, if we're being fair or if we're not being fair. if we are hiring people who just look like us or hiring people who allow for us to be a lot more diverse, all critical parts of it. So again, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today, teaching us a little bit more about the fairness that you guys do your best to bring to the, bring to the wide audience by far. And we're hoping that you will be a continuous resource for us as we sit back and grow and we try to make sure that we're making change within our small piece of the pie, within our small industry. We're strong, we're powerful, but yet we're small,
We're
but yet
small
we're
but mighty,
powerful.
right? Small but mighty.
There you go. So I want to say thank you so much for joining us. And again, we'll add this up to we'll have you on YouTube. We'll do all that good stuff to promote. And who knows, you might have some questions here and there. In fact, before we let you go, we do have, if there's one or two questions that might be asked of you. Did anybody have any questions before we let Shawn get back to his schedule? No.
I have a question.
Okay.
Go ahead.
My question, Shawn, and thank you so much for all of that. I think what you do is extremely, extremely valuable. And I am learning in this space for multiple reasons. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you was, where do you find, and you may have answered this inadvertently in what you were saying, but where do you find the most resistance?
It's a good question. I think we find the most resistance to diversity.
Yeah, the most resistance to what you're sharing, like the information. So you have the company do what they do with their survey. You go in and you start sharing how they can begin to make changes. So as they're going through that and managing the changes that they're going to make, where do you find that they are most resistant to any changes that are proposed?
I would say it's even before that. Their resistance is usually in giving us their data, right? It kind of starts with that. A lot of companies don't have to divulge data, right? So if you don't give us data, it's kind of garbage in, garbage out, right? So that's why we ask folks to fill out the survey in its entirety. There's going to be some nulls, obviously, right, with certain things, because there's obviously when you're a startup company or starting company in this journey, you don't have all the data you need. You don't have all the information and insights that you need to be prepared to get into this endeavor. So I would say, and personally, I've worked for a company who they desperately want to be in this journey, right, of diversity and fairness, but they don't want to give anybody any data, right? So, and in fact, I will say that it was frowned upon to even post the data, right? So when you start there, right, you start in backwards. And I think once they provide the data and we provide the resource and the insight, you can't really deny it, because number one, you gave it to us, right? And number two, the data is what it is, right? The data is going to tell us exactly what you need to know to do your job, right? To do what's fair for your employees. So we don't see a lot of resistance. There might be some price might be a resistance, but it's so funny, like companies that are $6 billion companies, they worry about price point like grandmothers at the supermarket, right? They're ridiculous. So but the value proposition that we provide to our companies is so robust that it's really hard to deny, right, from a cost perspective. So I would say to your question succinctly that it actually starts at the data submission stage where that resistance starts.
Thank you.
Okay.
Receive.
Chad, did you have a question?
Mine was on the business. Right before you asked it, Shawn, that's what I was wondering. Did you guys see this kind of explosive growth when everyone was running to DEI and everything in 2019, 20, and obviously 21, and how it settled. But do you actually have any data you can share, like, what annual revenue was coming into 2018, 2019, before that kick, like exponentially, what did that growth look like, if that's anything you're able to share?
You mean for my company or for
Yes,
partner
for diversity,
companies?
for Diversity Magazine, and I know their parent company, et cetera.
Yeah, I wasn't around, and it's not a number that I've explored. I can tell you essentially that we did have an explosion, but I can also tell you we've been in this business for 20 years, right? We've grown. Technically we grow 20% every year. If that gives you an insight into what we look like, right? So 20 years growth, right? You get what I'm saying, right? So I don't have any specifics, but I can tell you we're a consistently growing and growth minded company. And we also don't rest on what we did 20 years ago, right? Because the environment changes, right? Everything changes. So do we have to do some work to get to where we are today post George Floyd? Yeah, we had to, right? We have to do some work every year just to make sure that the survey is speaking to folks the way that they need to be spoken to today, and not 2022 or 2021, right? So there's a lot of work that goes into the stuff that we do, a lot of forecasting, a lot of pre-thought. And I know that companies benefit from what we tell them. So it's an editorial process, it's a data process, but more importantly, it's a consultative process. And it has many peaks and valleys. And I get excited when I get on a call and there's 20 people on the call, right? And they're all leaders, right? And they're all like global leaders. Oh, sorry, you also have to be a North America company, by the way. So I don't want to necessarily take away from the globalness of this, but anybody who knows and has done any work in DE&I knows that global companies always start from a North America perspective, if that's where they sit, because in fact it's easier to manage it, because we don't deal with we deal with diversity differently than others do across the pond, right? So Chad, I'm sorry that was long-winded, and I hope I answered your question, but
no, that was great.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that easily quantifiable. I know it's not publicly traded, so it's not like I can just go up and the quarterly reports or
it's my job to keep it quiet, Chad.
Hey, right? You're a silent assassin. But
I can tell you, I can give you some ifs and ands,
I've been very active
no.
in like we go to the SHRMs, we go to the ASTD, the ATDs now, right? And diversity inclusion, the magazines are always there. You guys have booth, you guys have a presence, you're sponsoring different breakouts, and even a lot of the fireside chats and panels, right? Your presence is always there. But I know in that realm, it didn't hold the same, weight as the standard ATD, organizational management, CLO, and the standard just HR realm. It was this added function that we know is there, but we don't have to pay a lot of attention to, where now it is front and center, right? From ESG all the way down to DE&I and everything in between, and the added layers of influence associated with LGBTQ, et cetera. Part of this initiative. This isn't just the black space. So it's everything is front and center. So I do expect that hockey stick parabolic growth to be immense, and you guys having a real value added seat at the table, where now you walk in, you get a dust off your shoulder when you walk in, where before, I know a lot of times you're showing up trying to prove your value, and now people are like, hey, we need you, and I get that. I just think there's some serious there around better understanding, like if we go through your list of top 100 companies, those are companies that when we have the ability to posture our services, those are the type of organizations we need to be getting in front of, because clearly they believe in their mission, and they're putting the systems, the foundations and supports in place to further that mission around, serious integration of DEI based initiatives. And so it's like my mind's always thinking about the reverse engineering as Black owned business owners of how we can better, surface visibility for ourselves for companies that care, instead of beating on doors that are closed that have zero intention of ever opening for us, right? So I think there's some more there.
Yeah, no, for sure. It is I mean, just as we look at and get data on supplier diversity, right? What's not important to this group, that supplier diversity is important to one of those top 50 companies or specialty companies that we also give kudos to. So there's a lot of organizations that can benefit. You mentioned ESG. I will tell you that, and it's something that we work on. It's an evolution for us as well. ESG is an evolution, right? So, as diversity, the word diversity sort of fades out, right? And terms like ESG and fairness and I even heard the term inversity and not diversity. Right? Like I heard that term the other day, and I won't tell you where I heard it from, but I did hear it from somebody in business, and she's a consultant, but she says, if you look at the root word of diversity, right, it's division, right? So like people spend their time trying to get rid of the terms that really just mean fairness, man, right? It's really just, why are we doing all this other stuff, right? So while our name is Diversity Inc., today, and we're happy to do that work, we're really powered by fairness, right? And that's probably as eloquent as I can put it. But I'll tell you, we just I just worked on a partnership with NASDAQ to become one of their, NASDAQ has an ESG platform called One Report. And we're the only diversity insights company on that platform. And we look to obviously garner many other clients from that relationship, right? So, we're continuing to spread the love, right? For lack of a better term, and expose ourselves in a way where, folks are systematically engaged in the conversations, in the journey, and in their people,